the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one. Amanda, would you take the roll, please?
Councilmember Stevens. Councilmember Strebe.
Here.
Councilmember Dalby.
Here.
Councilmember Myers.
Here.
Councilmember Rowe.
Here.
Mayor Lazio.
Here.
Items on the consent agenda. Minutes from regular meeting number 32 on October 4th and special meeting number 33 on October 11th, 2016 is presented. Acknowledge September financial statement and payment of bills as submitted by the Finance Department. Resolution number 245, 2016, approving and authorizing an economic development grant in an amount up to $5,000 to the Ottumwa Regional Airport and the Fly Iowa 2017 Committee pursuant to Iowa Code Chapter 15A. Resolution number 248, 2016, authorizing the Director of Finance to open a savings account with Wells Fargo Bank for investing excess RAGBRAI funds. Resolution number 250, 2016, authorizing the Mayor, City Administrator, Director of Finance, Treasurer, and Accountant as signatories for Wells Fargo Savings Account. Resolution number 251, 2016, approving the contract, bond, and certificate of insurance for Contract D for the Beach Renovations Phase 1 project. Beer and or liquor applications for Casey's General Store number 7, 1001 East Main Street, and La Cabana y Familia, 707 Church Street with outdoor service area. All applications pending final inspections.
Move the consent agenda as presented. Is there a second? Thank you, Matt. Any questions? Hearing none, take the roll.
Councilmember Stevens. Yes. Councilmember Strebe. Councilmember Dalby.
Yes.
Councilmember Myers.
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe.
Yes.
Before we get into the regular agenda tonight, I would like to inform the public we have a couple of guests here tonight, and I'd like to acknowledge both of them as part of our regular meeting. And so, Jody, I would like you to give us a little introduction about Make Ottumwa Shine and the fact that we have a number of people from Community First here tonight. We have the CEO, Greg Henshaw, Bobby Terrell, Rebecca Heminger, and Josh Martin. Sorry about that, Rebecca. And they worked very hard for the city, and we'd like to acknowledge that. So do you want to give a little background on that, please?
Certainly. Make Ottumwa Shine, as most of you know, is a grassroots effort to improve the appearance of the city. We have a lot of different ways that we do that. One primary way is collecting trash and litter in areas around the community. And this year, in addition to our spring cleanup event and RAGBRAI cleanup event and Babe Ruth World Series cleanup event, we were blessed with the Community First Credit Union group who adopted areas of the city and gave up some of their Columbus Day holiday to pick up trash and litter and beautify the city. And we have representatives from Community First to accept a certificate from the mayor. So if you would please come up.
If I may, Mayor, I would love to just let the council know and the folks represented here in this evening's meeting, one of the greatest pleasures I get as the CEO of Community First is to represent our organization at times like this. But I would be incredibly remiss if I didn't give the credit where the credit is due. And you see the folks standing behind me, Rebecca and Bobby and Josh. These three are members of a group at our company that we call the Ambassadors. And one of the jobs of the Ambassador Group is to look for opportunities for Community First to go out and do one of the things that I think we do the very best, and that is meet needs and provide service to the communities that we live and we work in. Now, I'm a resident of Fairfield, but I've been driving to Ottumwa every day to come to work for about the last 5 years. And I want you all to know that that's been a great experience for me, and I've come to love that drive and coming to Ottumwa every day. And there are things every single day that I learn new about Ottumwa that make me appreciate it even more. We had the pleasure this year of spending our Columbus Day off providing community service in two of our communities, Oskaloosa and Ottumwa. And these guys behind me, the ambassador group, made it all happen. They put the plan together. They reached out to the folks here in the city, Mayor, and came up with a plan and created an opportunity for literally about almost 100 of our employees to spend a good part of their day cleaning up different areas of this fine city. So big, huge thanks and kudos go to these three folks and all of the volunteers that represented Community First.
Well, Greg, I just want to say thanks on behalf of the entire city, because this has been a project that Jody has worked really hard. And when Josh contacted us and said that they'd like to find a project they could do, and they did 5 different regions all over town. And I know you mentioned 100 here, but there were 185 people at the shelter when I spoke to them at noontime that day. And I think, again, we just want to appreciate and recognize your contribution to making Ottumwa a cleaner place. And I was so impressed with the fun-loving and enthusiasm and energy that these folks had at the shelter. So it was a great day. The weather cooperated. So we appreciate that, and we hope you'll do it again. So again, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. And that goes without saying that sometimes we appreciate the outside groups that do a lot of work for us, but there are some times when our own staff go above and beyond the call of duty. And I think this year has been one of those examples where we have a husband and wife team who are the campground hostess. And Jean, if you would be so good, our Parks Director, Jean Ratchey, works directly with these folks, and it's been a very trying year with all the activities. We'd like to recognize them tonight too.
Yeah, our campground hosts this year are James and Patricia Brown. They went to work for us last year on September 20th, and they've been doing a fantastic job ever since. They've agreed to work for us again next year. And James is here tonight. He's in the corner. So could you come on up, please, sir? His wife is back at the campground keeping an eye on things. So
Somebody's got to cover the bases.
I just want to say again, thanks for all you've done. It's been a really demanding year with all the activity, and we still have pipeline people in the campground. 60, okay. So again, we just want to appreciate and recognize the dedicated hard work, 7 days a week and many hours late in the night. So thanks, and be sure to give Patricia a pat in the back for us too.
Oh, I will. Thank you very much.
Okay, item C, we need an approval for tonight's agenda.
So move. Second.
Okay, take the roll, please. Oh, we have a modification.
Skip, would you like to withdraw your motion?
Okay.
Thank you.
I would like to make the motion to approve the agenda with the removal of H 4 and 5.
Is there a second to?
I would second that.
Councilmember Stevens,
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe,
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby,
Yes.
Councilmember Myers,
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe.
Yes.
Okay, now we'll take the agenda as amended. And that was Skip and Matt. Are there any questions? Take the roll.
He withdrew his motion.
We still need to approve with the agenda. Okay.
I would
Thank
move to approve the agenda as amended.
We don't need to with the motion withdrawn and the motion to then approve the agenda with the removal of the two items. Yep.
Thank you, Amanda, for that clarification. Okay, item D, reports from city officers. I think the first one is Andy Morris, our city administrator. It's in your wheelhouse.
Thank you, Mayor. The very first item you see is listed here. I have a couple of additional items that I've also penned out here. As you know, we've indicated at previous meetings what we're going to try and do is give council a forewarning about those legislative matters coming to you that are impending. The very first item you see listed, the proposed minimum wage ordinance. This will be presented at the November 1st meeting, the regular council meeting. That proposed minimum wage ordinance, as you may recall, the council will have the option to either opt out of that, create their own wage, or perhaps develop a variation of that. The recommendation from staff, as it was at that meeting, will be the same that it is on the 1st, and that is that the city of Ottumwa opt out of the county's minimum wage proposal. The second item I do want to bring to your attention, and this is not listed, but I've had some correspondence this past week with Larry Seals, the Director of Public Works. The city is proposing develop a contract between Veenstrom and Kim and the city regarding sewer rates, and more specifically, it's a wastewater sewer rate study. We'll go into this in greater detail anyway, but I did want to let all the council members know I plan on bringing that forward as well at the November 1st meeting. I believe that's an item that will be discussed. There will not be any legislative action on it taken that evening. Again, that's between the city and Veenstrom and Kim. Finally, at that meeting, also on the 1st, you will see the development agreement between the city and Quincy Station LLC. As some of you may know, Quincy Station LLC, that is the Hobby Lobby contract. The staff has been working with our outside legal counsel, Allers Cooney out of Des Moines. Joni has certainly done a bang-up job for us in her role as city attorney, as has Bob J. But that development agreement will be coming in front of the city again at the November 1st meeting. I don't have anything else, Mayor, unless you or members of the city council have any questions or comments.
I do have a couple of items to share with the council and with the community. Received a letter from Brenda Case, who's on the Historic Preservation Commission, and they are doing a training Saturday, November 5th. It's about the whole process of downtown and historic preservation, and that is open to the public. And if there's anybody, I'll mention, let's see, we have Joyce Kramer, John Olinger, Fred Zessinger, Jody Gates, and Molly Nauman. So those are the people who will be involved with that. And if you have any questions, you can contact any one of them. And then lastly, due to an oversight in our agenda, we were going to vote on the Ottumwa First activity tonight. As you can see on the agenda, it's not listed, so we are going to postpone that to October 25th, and we will be sure that that is listed on the agenda as a actionable item. I would like to invite Cassandra or David, whoever would like to come up. We did have a meeting this morning with the Wapello County Board of Supervisors, and maybe you could highlight a little bit about that.
Good evening. Excited to be back here again this evening to provide an update on our very recent conversation that we had with the Wapello County Board of Supervisors. I will tell you it was a very lively discussion. We've discussed many aspects of the proposal. The Board of Supervisors asked multiple questions, and we were able to respond to all of those questions, namely around, really understanding the proposed design of the structure, the new operation, the role of the executive director, and obviously the funding commitment that we've asked for from them, the same as we've asked for from you. What I will share with you is they did not vote on the item today. And they have agreed, not through a vote, but through public discussion, that they will continue to participate in the initiative and continue to work with us, hoping that we can find compromise on some of the differences that we do share. So.
And I think it's fair to say that within that discussion, there were some good points made that really this model is emulating what was done with Partners in Progress several years ago. A couple of the supervisors were involved with that and were very supportive of that process. This just takes it a step further and really provides some direction. So we hope we can, I guess, work through those differences and go back to them with another proposal.
Next steps they did provide us as a takeaway from the meeting is just a couple of things. At our next advisory committee meeting, we are going to have a very thorough discussion around governance, and particularly one of the questions that the City Council asked as part of our last discussion around how we need to look at if there are members that choose later on down the road that they don't want to participate in the model, what the exit strategy could potentially be, as well as there was a suggestion to bring all of the funding entities together for ongoing discussion amongst the funders as well.
Any questions for Cassandra? Okay, thank you. We'll look forward to casting our votes on the 25th, which will be that'll be the only action item that we're planning on at this point. We are moving into, before I move into item D, I do want to mention Administrator Morris is going to a meeting Thursday on water and water quality, and I think we'll expect some kind of an update from him after that. That's an invitation-only meeting. And then lastly, on Thursday the 20th, the C3 group, which is Cradle College Career, is hosting a meeting for understanding how we can improve the workforce and educational attainment in our county. That'll be an all-day conference and a lot of local people involved in it, so just want to make you aware of that. All right, let's, are there any people who want to address an item on the agenda? If there's anybody in the audience that wants to address anything on our current agenda. If not, we'll move on to item F. Okay.
This is the time, place, and date set for a public hearing on the disposition of city-owned property located at 158 South Fellows. I received no objections on this item.
Okay. Good evening, Jody. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Alicia Long has offered the city $500 for a vacant lot at 158 South Fellows. Her intention is to build a daycare on the property, and she's attempting to acquire another vacant lot in the area. Staff recommends accepting her offer with the understanding that she'll pay all the costs of conveyance and any property taxes that might be owed.
This is a public hearing, so if there's anyone in the audience that wants to address this item, now's the time to step up. Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Resolution number 231, 2016, accepting the offer and approving the sale of city-owned property located at 158 South Fellows to Alicia Long for the sum of $500. Recommendation, passing it up, resolution number 231, 2016.
Move the recommendation as presented. Second.
Thank you. Any questions for Jody? Hearing none, take the roll.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Thank you.
This is the time, place, and date set for a public hearing on ordinance number 3101, 2016, amending the Code of Ordinances, Municipal Code of the City of Ottumwa, Iowa, by correcting the zoning classification on certain property located at 2305 North Court Street from C2 to C1. I've received no objections on this item.
Good evening, Kevin. Kevin Flanagan, our senior planner.
Thank you, Your Honor. Some of this may be familiar to some of you. This has been going on for quite a couple of years, few years here on this site, known as the Pipestone site. What happened was that we went through our normal processes for amending a zoning of a piece of property over some time ago, a few years back. I've got some copies of paperwork that kind of lay out what this timeline was. But originally, the property went through all of our processes all the way up until the first passage on the 16th day of April 2013, with all intent, the full intent of all of our processes through planning and otherwise, that the property be zoned to a C1, from an R1 to a C1. So it went through all these processes with the planning, up to the planning commission pass and everything else, came to council. And then in the final documentation, ordinance number 3048, 2013, because of what we like to call a Scrivener's error, in that document, it doesn't say C1, it says C2. So as you can imagine, this caused a bit of an uproar initially. So we've come back at this point, and we have been talking to the property owner in terms of some contractual agreement that would have the property be, although be zoned to C1, would also be a contractual conditional kind of agreement otherwise than just what you would normally see as far as the uses go into C1. In other words, it would be a few less uses in that C1. And the reason for the property owner being willing to even engender those kind of conversations was that if you look to the north of that piece of property there on the Pipestone site, there's a 19-foot, what we call paper street. It's a city easement that was, I guess, purportedly at one time or another going to be a city street. Years back, it was there from about maybe early 1900s. But it still exists there at that site. So there was some interest from the owner to maybe buy at least their half of that alley, if you will, or that paper street. The other half going to the other property owner to the north there, if we were to do that. Unless, of course, one property owner had no interest and went ahead and through some kind of lawful act, made it possible for Pipestone owner alone to be able to buy the whole alley. Well, those talks have been ongoing, but we really haven't went anywhere with that. But what we'd like to do now that the property is for sale is correct the Scrivener's error at least and make it known publicly and for all matter and purpose that it is a C1 as it was fully intended to be. So that's why we're here tonight to get that done.
Okay, this is also a public hearing, so if there's anyone in the audience that wants to address this item, now is the time to step to the microphone. Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Stevens,
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe,
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby,
Yes.
Councilmember Myers,
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe.
Yes.
Ordinance number 3101, 2016, amending the Code of Ordinances, Municipal Code of the City of Ottumwa, Iowa, by correcting the zoning classification on certain property located at 2305 North Court Street from C2 to C1. Recommendation A, pass the first consideration of ordinance number 3101, 2016.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented. Second.
Thank you. Any questions for Kevin?
Colonel, I've got a question. Kevin, this really doesn't have anything to do with the motion on the floor to approve or not, but it's just out of curiosity. With that paper easement going through there now, and has been there for years, and now that that's kind of, on the table, when we passed that planning and zoning ordinance, was there anything in there with that C1 classification? If there was something to move onto that property now that would fit into that classification that would be approved there, allowed there, is that property of decent size enough to fit those requirements, or are there requirements in there now that would not allow some uses in that C1, or is it still big enough to be used for some of those uses?
Well, in the sense that it's a double lot essentially, because there's an R1 there, or there's a
House.
a single family house there on the combined lot to the south of it. If that house were to be raised, I mean, there's some possibility that you'd see typical C1. I mean, C1's neighborhood commercial, so I mean, they're going to be limited in scope. The uses would be limited in scope. There's some possibility of some uses that are permitted straight up under the C1 classification that you'd also see in a C2. But you got to look at the commercial limitations, the real life limitations rather than the lawful ones, I think. There was a lot of concern from folks in the immediate area and the general area around there, a couple of citizens that you might see, convenience store. Having been in that business, I was born and raised into that business as a family business, and fuel sales is a big part of that. That's the worm on the hook. And without fuel sales, which should be hard to be even done there, I'm not sure what the track flow is on the street. I don't have that on me, but it's not that great. And it's not going to be, I don't think the site itself is large enough to put in tanks to do that. Convenience store without gasoline, very limited there. Tavern is something that is permitted, and that's going to include, bars, cocktail lounges, and other things that both prepare and retail sell alcohol on site, is permitted there. But there again, your parking is going to be limited. The depth of the lot is not good. The lot is shallow. So, I mean, I think there's some real world, not just geographic per se or whatever, but just logistical difficulties commercially with it. Something I didn't say a second ago that I meant to say was that when we did go through the planning process, the Planning Commission did want to relate to the council that they'd like to see a council consideration of downzoning the lot actually to an R1 instead of rather than being a C1. Now, some of that talk was initially going on as well when this was happening. when the initial allowance was made for a C1. But they did want council to know that they wished that to be considered. And that would, of course, be a lot more.
And this was reviewed by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
It was, and in their approval of this action, they wanted that condition or that consideration to be recommended, with the recommendation to get the Scrivener's error correction.
Okay. Any other questions for?
I have a question. With downzoning to R1, does that have to be by the approval of the current owners?
Well, no, not necessarily. A council can take an action to downzone a piece of property. In doing so, there in many court cases, this thing has been done. I myself have done it in the act of doing a new zoning code, downzone the entire city, and then put up maps and let citizens come in and color code those to show us their wishes for future classification and stuff like that. But an action to downzone has the risk of being classified, at least legally, as a taking of property use. Because you can, a lot of times when you see that in court cases, it's been done against the will of the owner. In this case, I don't speak for the owner, but I'm fairly sure that in the sense that they're selling it, that their wish would be that it remain C1. That's assumption only.
In no way do I want to see a tavern in that spot.
Yes, I don't think that's in the city's or the neighborhood's better interest. But then again, it's a shallow lot. It's limited. It would be, and the building on the lot too, having looked at it, I haven't been in it, but I've examined it, on the outside very well, and it's not in very good shape. It's older. It hasn't been steadily improved over the years, and it's been sitting fallow for quite a bit now. So the weather is having an impact there. So I would think that to do a tavern there, you'd have to destruct both of those buildings that are on site. So there's some cost to getting into that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so you have a motion and a second. Let's take the roll.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Recommendation B, waive the second and third considerations. Pass and adopt ordinance number 3101, 2016.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Any questions for Kevin? Okay, take the roll.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Resolution number 232, 2016, authorizing reimbursement of expenses in the amount of $32,000 incurred by the city for payment under Iowa Code Section 403.19. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 232, 2016.
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Okay. Good evening, Bob. You have the floor.
Good evening, Your Honor. Thank you, and good evening, Council. This is an annual request that we do. Certain disbursements are not allowed to be paid directly from the Urban Renewal Area Tax Increment Financing Funds, though they are eligible urban renewal disbursements. The above dollar amount of $32,000 is to support the downtown maintenance program for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2018. We have to request this in advance so that we get it authorized in advance, so when the fiscal year comes around, we can capture the taxes that are appropriate for that expenditure. This resolution authorizes for the reimbursement from the Westgate TIF Fund to reimburse the general fund in accordance with the Iowa Code Section 403.19. The reimbursement will be funded with future tax increment finance revenue in fiscal year 2018.
Basically, Bob, this is the cooperative agreement.
It's for the downtown maintenance program, the flowers and things like that are
Right.
ongoing program.
Okay. Any questions for Bob? Okay, take the roll.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Thank you.
Resolution number 239, 2016, a resolution of intent to approve the request for the use of tax increment financing for construction of workforce housing development located at 539 West 4th Street, City of Ottumwa, Wapello County, Iowa. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 239, 2016.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Good evening again, Kevin. You have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yes, this resolution we had discussed in our prior meetings is for the application for tax credits for development that we are hoping to undertake. in partnership with developer on 539 West 4th. It is for LMI tax credits. Now, there are two different tax credits that have been applied for at this site, which is not beyond the normal. One is with the Department of Economic Development, which would be for brownfield, grayfield development. The difference with those two being that brownfield developments are typically on former industrial sites, either privately or publicly owned, that have an impact from chemicals that resulted from the production or activities that were on that site involved in that use for many, usually in cases for many, many years. And you'll have the site cleanup of that stuff, toxic typically, before redevelopment occurs. A grayfield is going to be a site that was formerly developed, but it's not now being used to meet its full potential from an economic development standpoint or an economic commercial type use. So grayfield credits were applied for on this, but as you can read, when you saw the resolution, it mentions low income housing tax credits. Now that's through IFA, and that's the primary application here. We do have Richard Silva here with Landover Corporation. If anybody had any questions from him, he'd be glad to answer those. And this would be for 52 units development, about 10%, 5 or 6 of those units are going to be market rate. It's important to note also the difference between market rate and low to moderate income. When we talk about LMI, a lot of folks want to jump to the low side of that indication with LMI. But typically, when you talk about LMI type developments, low to moderate income developments, you're talking about moderate rate housing today. So very literally on this site, the difference between the two rents could be $50 to $100. You know, it's not going to be a very great dispensation of difference between the prices of a moderate rate and a market quote rate housing in our city. But this is for 52 units. 5 or 6 of those will be market rate. And I've used the interchangeable word of workforce housing with this because literally half of the credits that were applied here, the ones I mentioned for Economic Development Department, are called workforce housing tax credits. But it's for low to moderate income folks in our city who typically will be the workers that staff our many shops and services around town that make us the regional leader that we are. So I'd entertain any questions about the development.
Well, yeah, yes, Kevin. When I read this description and I saw the workforce category, I was pleased with that. I thought that's really great. But then I became a little concerned again on the low income side of things. Yeah. And it's not a question for you to answer right now, I guess, because the overall project looks to me to be very good, 52 units, potentially whatever. But I guess, Kevin, in the future, because last meeting you brought to my attention, our attention, that in fact by doing some of these things we can then hopefully do away with some of the lesser quality housing that we know exists. But I guess in the future I'd like to know what you think plans would be for us to be able to do that. So great that we're getting new units and for this workforce category, but rather than, you know, what will our future plan be to close down some of those lesser rental properties then?
Yes, and Andy's been discussing with me a very good idea that he had that perhaps we would get together, you know, on in a planning type scenario at some point in the future when staff has been able to finish its work and really bring our concepts around, you know, circle our wagons on the concepts and say, okay, here's what our plan is. I think it's probably difficult to say, or it's probably it may be impossible to say that we're going to be able to maybe shut down what are some of our Section 8 government-owned housing facilities, right? But I do think that there's a lot of actions that we can take, and I think our plan, when we do present it to council and it is ready for public consumption, I think people will see that there's a process that we can go through in as short a period of time as over the next 10 years, where we can stop that in its place and you know, turn over the housing situation of the county, where that's not even a question of something that we need more of, because we have equally affordable and private options that service our workforce in a very real way, like Section 8 doesn't, I think. And I think a lot of other folks would agree with that. And this is economic development at its best too, right? Because one side is going to be feeding the other. So
sounds like a great plan. Thank you.
Hope to bring that forward soon.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I speak to that
Certainly.
for just a moment? And as Kevin referenced, we haven't quite dialed down on this completely, but to Councilman Meyer's question, I think it's very well taken, and that's this. It's a discussion we've had about a two-pronged approach, and that is just as was mentioned. that if we're going to create certain units that are workforce rate or low to moderate income, we should be equally as vigilant as taking out those units that are more than substandard. And I know that involves something the city's not done a lot of, and I would argue thinking that you need to do more of, and that's removing homes. There are some of them that are simply beyond reconstruction and beyond the pale. And I do think it's a very, very good point, very well taken, and council's certainly expressing interest in that. I can tell you from a staff level, I would not be interested in pursuing this any further unless there's a quid pro quo. And that is to say, if we're going to build these affordable units, there's got to be a follow-up on getting rid of some of these units that are not only in some instances inhabitable, but at the same time just dangerous. So that will follow suit. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, I don't know if that can be reiterated enough. That's a very good point. It's not just about providing options. So it's also about providing direction to the future growth, and causing for one thing to be an exodus into another thing. And all of that, kind of buttressing the tax base, the overall valuations of the city. And, and providing the kind of lifestyle and the kind of quality of life that our workforce needs to really come here, right? That's one of the first things that industry is going to look at. It's a key element to quality of life. That's a good point.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Let's call the question.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Resolution number 242, 2016, terminating the lease agreement to share the city's transit offices and garage at 2417 South Emma, Ottumwa with the 1015 Regional Transit Agency. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 242, 2016.
Is there a motion?
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
I think City Attorney Joni Keith is going to address this. So, Joni?
Thank you, Your Honor. For many years, the city had been providing transportation services for the 1015 Regional Transit Agency. Due to the Affordable Care Act, 1015 Transit was forced to separate from the city effective January 1 of 2014. Right before the split, the city approved a 5-year lease agreement between Ottumwa Transit and 1015 to share office space, maintenance garage, and equipment. Effective October 1, 2016, 1015 Transit has relocated its offices to real estate recently purchased in Ottumwa. The city and 1015 Transit has negotiated an agreement involving the termination of the lease agreement and the retention of those office and equipment assets purchased by 1015 Transit. In lieu of retaining an ownership interest in the city's transit office, buildings, and equipment, the parties have agreed to mutually terminate the lease agreement. I've attached a copy of a letter from their 1015 Transit attorney, Bob Breckenridge, confirming the mutual agreement. I'll be glad to answer any questions you would have.
Questions for Joni? Hearing none, let's take the roll.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Resolution number 246, 2016, directing the advertisement for sale of $1,400,000 general obligation bonds, Series 2016A, and approving electronic bidding procedures and official statement. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 246, 2016.
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
Go ahead, Bob, you have the floor.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is an interim step necessary prior to the sale of the bonds. This resolution authorizes the advertisement for sale and use of electronic bidding. The electronic bidding procedure is recommended by our financial advisor, Spear Financial. We have used electronic bidding previously for the sale of the bonds and notes. These bonds will be repaid from future debt service levies of the city of Ottumwa. We have a total of asking $1.9 million, and of that, $300,000 is going to be used for the Hobby Lobby incentive, $600,000 for the Jefferson Street Bridge repair and maintenance, $700,000 for the beach, $80,000 to repay Bridgeview Inc., $90,000 for the abatement of the asbestos in the basement. We still have some areas that need to be finished, and wrapping of the steam pipes, $25,000 for the an economic development grant to Legacy for the dark fiber that we are going to be benefiting from very soon, and $30,000 for the Buxton study. And then the balance, that comes to 1.8 million to $25,000. The balance will be costs or funds to use to cover the closing costs.
Any questions for Bob? Bob, what does this do to our debt limit? And I know the answer to that, but I want you to.
We're right at 40%. In fact, we just had a conversation with Moody's. It's not official, but he said the debt rating for this issue and our former debt will still be retained at A1. So
Great.
I'm very excited about that. We'll know officially on the 28th of this month. So we're able to retain that debt service in spite of things. So
Okay, very good. I just want to be sure that the public's aware that the Iowa Code prescribes a constitutional limit for all cities, and we're not even close. Any other questions? Okay, take the roll.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Resolution number 247, 2016, approving electronic bidding procedures and official statement. Recommendation, pass and adopt resolution number 247, 2016.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions for Bob?
well, let me kind of explain, Your Honor. This is the taxable portion of the whole bond issue. Some of the items, when you give benefit to individual entities directly, those are not, without the proper resolutions and things in place, those are not a tax-free obligation. So we'll be issuing $500,000 of the 1.9 will be a taxable bond issuance. So we have two issuances going on, 2016A and 2016B. So, and this approves the electronic bidding procedures and the official statement.
Everybody clear? Questions? Okay, take the roll.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Good job on keeping our Moody's rating too.
Ordinance number 3099, 2016, amending Chapter 7 entitled Animals and Fowl by deleting sections 7.1, 7.4, 7.7, 7.12, 7.20, 7.21, 7.24, 7.32, 7.33E and F, 7.41, 7.42, 7.49, and 7.61, and inserting new sections 7.1, 7.4, 7.7, 7.12, 7.20, 721, 724, 732, 733 and E and F, 741, 742, 749, and 761 of the Municipal Code of the City of Ottumwa, Iowa. Recommendation, pass the first consideration of ordinance number 3099, 2016.
Move the recommendation as presented.
Second.
I think Joni's going to cover this as she has been the principal author.
Thank you, Your Honor. At the request of Councilman Mark Rowe, we developed a committee made up of Police Chief Tom McAndrew, our Animal Control Officer Jeff Williams, and Mark Rowe and myself. And we reviewed Chapter 7, our Animal Ordinance Code, to look at some animal enforcement issues and how we could beef up this code section. So we made a number of changes to do that. Section 7.1 includes new definitions for adequate food, adequate protection from the elements, adequate shelter, proper enclosure for dangerous animals, and redefines animal control shelter. I've provided more specific substance to 7-4, which defines cruelty. And this section also makes it a cruel event when you leave an animal in a standing or parked vehicle. And it does authorize our animal control officer or a police officer to actually get into the vehicle, even though it may be damaged, and remove that animal to possibly save its life without incurring any additional liability. We've clarified the section 7-7 for abandonment of animals. We've redefined restraining of animals. We've tried to be a little more specific on noisy animals. how animals should be confined under 7-24. We also changed a couple of our code sections. Iowa law requires an impoundment period of time to be 10 days instead of 14 days. We've also changed our law to reflect state law. Dealing with rabies shots are going to be required at 4 months. The animal has to be 4 months of age to have a rabies shot instead of 6 months. And finally, 7-61 further defines a potentially dangerous animal to include those who inflict injury to a human being or possibly not inflict injury. It's open-ended there. Another domestic animal chases people in a threatening manner or with a known propensity to attack when unprovoked. This section or these changes need to be read in light of the whole chapter 7. We haven't made any other changes to it, so you've got to read it in conjunction. And then the last change, and I will be bringing this to you during the last reading of this ordinance, we are requesting in a separate resolution that the fee for licensing animals or dogs will remain at $5, except for those dogs that are unspayed or unneutered. Though that fee would be $25 instead of $5, and that would encourage our residents to get those animals fixed so we can reduce our animal population. And I'll be glad to entertain any questions you might have. Police Chief McAndrews here, and so is Jeff Williams, our control officer, and both of them can address any questions you would have as well.
Mr. Mayor, I just had one question on this, and I know Joni has done a really good job in putting this together. It's my understanding, though, that the police department still has some questions and clarification matters, the ordinance. In addition to that, it was my understanding there was a veterinary clinic that was going to offer some of their advice and consent. I say all that only to ask, is all things being equal then, is it staff's plan then to bring this up for final consideration at the next meeting on the 1st of November?
Our proposal was to have it read 3 different times and just have it progress, first reading, second reading, third reading. We didn't request to waive that, so there could be any additional discussion.
I see. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, are there other questions? Mr. Myers?
Yes, I guess, and I have talked with Attorney Keith about this. I read all of the amendments and understood, thought they were very great, but I did not go back and refer to all of Chapter 7. And so once she reminded me of that, and then I saw that, in fact, animals that we have classified as dangerous are still classified as dangerous. So anybody else just looking at the amended parts of it, I would do as she did, and refer you back to all of Chapter 7.
Yeah, the question that was raised was, does our ordinance still ban pit bulls in the city limits? Yes, pit bulls are banned from the city limits. That remains the same.
But inclusive, though, there is a total list of other dangerous animals, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Good. Thank you for that clarification. Any other?
I guess maybe this is a question for Joni. Prior to this, what was the fee for license of a non-spayed or neutered animal?
There was no distinction made as to whether that animal had been fixed. So all dogs, the license fee was $5.
And you don't think this will cause people to not buy license because it's not spayed or neutered? Will this make any difference in your opinion?
Time will tell as far as whether that will impact that. We're hoping that people that come in that have not had their animal fixed, that they will realize that the $25 is additional money they have to pay if they want to keep that dog in that condition.
So
it is by resolution also. It's not in this particular ordinance, but that is something that this committee is recommending. I did also run the ordinance by Heartland Humane Society, and they specifically requested that this be put in place. In fact, they wanted a higher fee than the $25. They thought it should be substantially higher, but we thought we could start here at 25 and see if that would encourage people to get their animals fixed. A lot of cities around the state do have that in place, and I'll provide at the last reading, if I bring that resolution back, I will have some statistics for you on that issue also.
So what you're saying, according to what Andy said, there's going to be some changes possibly made between now and the last reading? Is that what you're saying, Andy?
That's certainly my understanding, yeah.
No. We have been in some discussions with Heartland Humane Society about the possibility down the road of their sharing being our shelter facility. So instead of animals that are picked up by Officer Williams going to Pipestone and then being held, and then Heartland, if the animal isn't claimed, Heartland will often come in and pay the fees and take the animal to their facility. Instead, they would take that animal to Heartland right from the start. So that's something we're in negotiations with. There's been no final discussion about that yet. And we believe they would have to perhaps build a facility to help house those animals, and they don't have the funding. They're going to be requesting grant money to help put up a building. So that may be several months down the road, at least not this year, maybe hopefully in 2017.
Well, Mr. Mayor, just another question for clarification. This perhaps speaks to the question that Councilman Stevens asked, and that is, to the extent that council is going to be asked to have one more reading.
Two more readings.
Two more readings. That lends even further credence to the fact that it's still an item of discussion for council.
That's definitely true.
Okay. That's all I had, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are you clear then that at this point we're doing the...
Yeah, I'd like to make another comment if I may.
Go ahead.
Councilman Stevens, this issue on the fee was addressed by a previous council I worked with, and there was discussion, as you've raised, Skip, on the different rates. And at the time, we chose to stay with the 5 both ways. But it's my understanding, since those periods of years have gone by, that we find more animals that are released or get away or whatever that had not been fixed or neutered. And so it almost seemed that, okay, a person might pay that additional fee for a license period or 2, but after that period of time, then maybe they would consider that it's time to go ahead and get that done. Just a little more information.
What is the license period?
I'm not sure what your question is.
Is it a one-time licensing? Every
No,
time?
they have to annually have the dog licensed, and it's in January of each year. And I think there's a $1 penalty if they don't have it licensed by February 1st.
$5.
Another $5 if they don't have it licensed. And they don't have to have it licensed until the dog is 4 months old at this point, and that's when the rabies shot's required.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
I've read the ordinance too, and I just want to thank Councilman Rowe for taking the initiative to get this done. This is no hard, easy task, especially with all the time that Joni has had writing this up. I know she's got a lot of work to do as a city attorney. So thanks to you two and the chief and Officer Williams. This is your day job, so you know this better than anybody else. So this is a long time coming. It's good. The revenue component is important too, because we got to understand that we said this, Councilman Rowe said this from the beginning, this may look like some kind of increase in fees, but that's exactly what it needs to be. There's a lot of money we spend out enforcing this. and trying to keep animals off the streets, strays, not only to keep it out of the public's eye for safety, but it's also unfair to the animals to be strays and loose and not be cared for. So it's a two-pronged approach I think is great. Another something interesting I read in the ordinance here too is, we hear a lot of times about animals being left in cars during the summer unattended, and that's addressed here in the cruelty section. And it was just interesting to note here that and I'm not sure if this was in the old ordinance or not, but now I do read it now that the community service officer will be able to remove the animal by whatever reasonable means necessary without liability for the purpose of taking the animal into protective custody. And so we've seen that in the news a lot lately, that animals, being killed by being left in the cars. So that looks like something that's been added. That's a good thing. So hats off to you guys for doing this. It's been long needed, I believe.
I would echo that.
All right, their recommendation is to pass the first consideration of this ordinance. It's been moved and seconded. Are you ready to vote? Okay, take the roll, please.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
I would move down to item K. This is an opportunity for the public to comment on any item of business for the city. It does not have to be on the agenda. Is there anybody that wants to address any item of city business? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. Is there any other communication with council about any topic? Remember, we will be voting on the 25th about the Ottumwa First, and that same evening we'll be doing a planning session with Jeff Schott. And that's going to be, I think, at Bridgeview. Is that correct?
That is correct, Bridgeview.
So we'll make sure that the media is aware of that. Is there any other business that needs to come before the city? I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Councilmember Stevens?
Yes.
Councilmember Strebe?
Yes.
Councilmember Dalby?
Yes.
Councilmember Myers?
Yes.
Councilmember Rowe?
Yes.
Thank you. 6:27 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you all and good night.